And when I was in LA a few weeks ago, the weather there was so gloomy and like it was like literally overcast every day.
I love it because I just got back from the UK, and it's a beautiful transition. The last time I came back from the UK, it was raining there and raining here, and it was January, and just it's like it's for me. It's just sort of eases my transition.
Oh, it does, eh? Okay, that's good.
Yeah, it's actually sunny now. It's but it's still warmer in London than it is in LA these days.
Yeah, that's what I found. So I flew in from Toronto, and when I left Toronto, it was almost like in a humidity warning. It was super hot, and I get into LA, which I would expect more hotter, and it was much cooler. I needed to grab my hoodie and just have it all the time when I was walking around.
That's crazy.
The weather's doing funny business. But thank you so much, man, for joining. Appreciate you tuning in, and looking forward to chatting with you about Up in the Air and your career as well.
Cool.
So tell me how you got started in the world of music. What inspired you to take a crack at it?
So, nothing inspired me to take a crack at it. It was just in the blood. I mean, I think at the age of about 5 is when I started demanding to learn an instrument. But and I know that as a small kid, I made instruments. I made a drum kit out of old cans and cling film, wrap film, and my elder brother. When I started learning violin, I wanted to learn double bass, and I was 5. So my mum taught me down to a violin, which I don't think parents know what they're in for if they make a child play the violin. But double bass would have been a much softer sound than that. But my brother had instrument envy, so he started learning piano, and I couldn't leave the piano alone. And I was bantering the piano because it was my brother's instrument. Made no difference. I was so much more into the piano than he was, and I was always really into music. And then I know that somewhere in it's around 11 or 12, I realized that if you're going to write original music and everyone's going to know it and have associations with it, film is a great place to do that, because you can write an orchestral piece. Who knows any orchestral music? Well, film orchestral music, because it immediately means something. It's like our song, but in a parallel universe. It has immediate associations because you associate it with the actions, with the characters, with the romance of the story. So right around the age of 11 or 12, I started getting very preoccupied by film music.
Great. And what music was it that got you going in terms of film music?
Oh, I think anything. I mean, I don't know exactly what I was watching at
maybe what was it? Was it the 90s, the 80s, or
it was
it was earlier. Well, it didn't seem like that it was earlier, so I was just.
Thank you. No, it was in the 70s, but I know that. Let's think. I mean, everything from the Railway Children through James Bond, Lawrence of Arabia. All that stuff. The music had so much, emotional weight and melody. Melody was a big deal in those days. And then, also at 11, I saw the original London production of Jesus Christ Superstar with Rolfe Kent in the lead role, and I was looking at that, just getting musical theatre. I need to get into that. And so I think it was it's the magic of performance and the interplay of music and drama and the emotional and romantic weight of music in film. That all that stuff, yes, in film and in theatre, all that stuff made me absolutely in love with the use of music in storytelling.
Yeah, and it's the act of creation, right? Like you're creating something from scratch. But I think what's bigger, a lot of people, like, even people in the industry, when we're watching films, we will notice music, but sometimes it's just done so, it's such a good marriage between the visuals and the music that you don't notice that it's there. But if it's not there, then you realize the importance of it. Like we kind of take it for granted.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. And when the marriage is not good, then you start noticing details. But I mean, I'm a film lover. I'm a story lover. So I don't know how the music is made when I'm listening to it. I may just go later. That was an incredible moment. I have to see that again and try and figure out what was being done. I mean, a classic example is for me a surprising example is Cry the Beloved Country, scored by John Barry. Absolutely mesmerizing score in the film. If you listen to the score outside the film, you just go, it's nice tunes, but it's an awful lot of the same tune. It seems as a piece of music, as an album, it's different, but in the context of the film, it is absolutely electric. I mean, the weight of it, the moments of it, there's a moment of a particular confrontation between two characters where the music is doing. I didn't know what the music was doing. The moment is so incredible, and then later you listen to the music on its own and you go, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." But it was just the genius of the marriage of story and the fact that the marriage was so perfect that you can't analyze it. You're just lost in the moment of it.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned John Barry. Recently, I rewatched Out of Africa and Dances with the Wolves, both by John Barry, and the music in both of them in the film, and they're both very scenic films, right? And visually beautiful, and as storytelling and films, they're masterpieces. And then when I downloaded both soundtracks on my phone, and I would listen to it. And the funny thing is, I would probably only recognize the main theme note, and then I'll pay attention to it, and then after that, it's just something playing in the background. That's it. Like it's just something to keep me off, relaxing me, but I'm not really paying attention to it. I don't know if that makes sense, and you're so right about that. But music alone, sometimes, some soundtracks, like if you take, for example, Gladiator or Star Wars, they themselves can live on without the film. But some soundtrack, and this is not trying to say that one is better than the other. It's just the way it is that certain musics, they're just married really, really well, and they're in there very, very subtly, which I enjoy the most. And everybody's different, of course.
Yeah.
Great. And what was your first film that you did?
First film.
How did you, whichever it was, how did you get into Hollywood?
Well, how I got in, I did, what was it called? There was a film which had Aunt Esther in the title, and it was a short film. And so my path into Hollywood was basically I went to university to study something completely different, and while at university wrote some music for a play that went to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and the play was written and directed by Mark Wadlow and Peter Morgan. And Peter Morgan, since then, he writes The Crown. He wrote The Queen. He wrote so many films which aren't about the royal family. Rush, right? And And so I did some music for that. And then, so that was really the first time I did music for storytelling. And then on the back of that, found myself trying to doing lots of short films, lots of whatever anyone would hire me to do. And one particular short film, The Saving of Aunt Esther, that's what it was called, by Nick Brandt. And it was a short film, and it got the attention, that got me into Hollywood. The director, Nick, went from London to Hollywood, found that they were making a lot of short films in Hollywood for one particular company, and they wanted someone in-house to write the music, and so they hired me to do the music for them. And that was great because I met lots of directors, and because all these short films, but they were being made by different people, including Alexander Payne and Richard Shepard, who are still close friends and people I work with. And that was really my way, the first thing that got me busy here in LA.
That's great. I saw Up in the Air when it came out, and it's been 12 years now. I couldn't believe it when I pulled it up again to rewatch it, and it's a completely different film than it was 12 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things that really was kind of timely is the idea of firing people over the internet, especially with the Zoom. And there was some news recently too, where a CEO fired 100 of his employees over Zoom, and how things have sort of changed so much. How had you worked with Jason before Up in the Air, and if not, how did you get on board on that project?
I had. We did Thank You for Smoking together.
Oh, you did Thank You for Smoking. That's a great film. I totally forgot it was Jason, and I didn't realize it was yours. And what was your introduction to Jason in that film like, just to kind of figure out the connection that you guys had before working together?
Oh, that was just, my agent. So I don't know how we ended up in the same room. My agent said, meet this person, and I'm sure he'd met a few people. We chatted and got along well, so we worked on that film together. That was interesting. He's a very interesting director, and very creative and innovative and open. Yeah, he was from the outset. He was on Thank You for Smoking. And it really came through on. We filmed 4 films together, I think, and he's really got an interesting philosophical approach to music and storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, Up in the Air, have you seen it recently, or has it been a while?
It's been a while. I was just thinking this morning, it's got one of the, when you say a lot has changed in 12 years, Zach Galifianakis is one of the, it's pretty much the first actor you see on the screen. And it's a bit part because he's not a star yet. And,
yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because when he came in, I'm like, is he in the film? I don't remember him. And maybe he's going to show up in the middle of the film. Somehow the story is going to get reconnected. But yeah,
he wasn't as big as he is now. And now, if you saw the beginning of the film, you just go, well, he's got to be a major character. But
yeah, and with Up in the Air, in terms of music, so here's the funny thing. We were talking about that earlier, right? That I watched it a few days ago, and when I'm trying to speak to somebody who's involved in a film, whether it's a cinematographer, writer, director, editor, I'm always, when I rewatch a film, I'm always trying to watch it in that context. And very few times I forget that context, and that happened to me in Up in the Air. I completely forgot about the music. I didn't even pay attention, because the characters and the story are so amazing and so rich that I had to go back and kind of just skip my way through and find the main musical tracks. What was especially when he was packing, George Clooney's character, whenever he's packing, there's this amazing little music piece that comes in. I haven't even heard anything like that before, and I'm not a musician by any means. I don't know the instruments. I just know when it's good, it's great. It just stood out the second time that I watched it again. What's your process for coming up with something like that? Like, do you listen to anything else, or you do not listen to anything else, or working with the director? What's his language to you, etc.?
Yeah, I think it was, it's different on every film because it's different with every director.
Sure.
And with Jason, I know the packing sequence. I'm trying to remember what the conversation was that we had about that. Because Jason loves to pare things down. From the very outset, he was very sort of clear that the sort of big romantic scores, the very rich melodic scores, are not his speed at all. So the fact that there are two all percussion pieces in the score is perfect for Jason, because there's no melody. It's all about just energy. What kind of energy we're looking for, and also, so the packing sequence is one of those percussion sequences, isn't it? It's the actual sequence is quite. It's all about efficiency, isn't it? They're putting things in bags, zipping, lots of snap, and it's because the character George Clooney is playing is all about efficiency. It's all about getting places, and he travels all the time. He knows exactly how he's going to pack, and the music is there to give it sort of that efficiency, that energy, that push, so that it's just has momentum. Bang! He's at the airport, and it sort of like builds to that moment. And I have a lot of percussion instruments in here, and in the one I used, this is a particularly strange one. It's an oudou pot, but oudou pot's not normally this shape, and this one's extremely flat. It's like a UFO, and it's made of clay. And so it's a really interesting sound. It's got some bass to it. It's got some snap to it. And I showed him this, and I was sort of playing it, and he was just going, "It's okay, just use that." And he was sort of in my studio, just going, "Okay, definitely use that. What else have you got?" And so I showed him various instruments, and then sort of start building, then he'd leave and I'd create something, and then he'd come back and give me feedback about how it was working.
Right.
But so things like the packing cue is definitely done very much in that spirit. I mean, of course, there are other melodic cues in the film, and but a lot of it was about that forward momentum. That sort of there are moments of emotionality, and of course, there's that whole romance side story that goes on, and there's that sort of dance of sensuality within that. But Jason, there was one particular cue where I'd written. It wasn't very many instruments. It was like ukulele, harp, clarinet, and then Jason would watch it and go, "What would it be like without the clarinet?" And so I play it to him. And he goes, "And without the ukulele," and you take that out, and you just go, "Well, then it's just the harp." And he goes, "Beautiful." And then when I hear it with his ears, with a perspective, because as a composer, you're always just going, "I don't know if that's enough. Let's add more." And then when someone comes in and takes the more away, and then just shows you what you actually had done, and you go, "Oh yeah, you're right. It does work." And that was, he's really good. I mean, that's what I mean by he likes to pare things down. He's really good at that. He's really good at just sort of saying, you're getting in the way. To sort of get the stuff that's in the way out, and then just see what we have. And he's really excellent at that.
Well, I mean, it shows in his work too in the film, specifically the twist at the end. I mean, that I feel that had it been any other director, not everybody, but had it been any other director, they could have, the two leading actor and actresses, they could have had a conversation at the door. But he chose not to do that. As soon as George Clooney's character is here, sees the kids and he hears honey, he just walks away. I mean, that's the simplest thing, right? Like, less is more. And I think a lot of times as composers or as writers or directors or editors, you always end up trying to do more, but sometimes the answer is in the most simplest things.
Yeah. Also, I mean, he's making films for, adults, not idiots.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't have to spell everything out. It's there. You know what the message is. It's not. Yeah.
But you know what? It's funny though, because that scene, I remember that scene. That scene stood out. The only thing that stood out for me from that film, even when I was going to rewatch it, was that scene. I just remember there was a scene, and it was very powerful. And I don't remember if there was a dialogue around it or not. And when I was watching it again, and the scene came, and when there was just this dead silence, and part of me was like, I hope they have a conversation, just to kind of figure out where this is going and that. But then I'm like, I hope they don't. And then that kind of wins at the end, because that just said so much more than, having a conversation which would have ruined the moment completely.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. It's beautiful pacing in the. It's such a clean way of telling a story. And it involves the audience, because you connect with it and join the dots.
Yeah. What was your reaction when you first read the script and that part came up? Like, was that something you were expecting?
I don't think I ever saw the script, actually.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
No,
when you found out about the film, the ending?
I don't. It's been a while. I don't know.
I know. Because there was no music in there, so I don't blame you for not remembering that part, because there's literally nothing happening in terms of musical tunes, or it was just, that moment. But that's okay. I was just curious. I know it's been a while. I
mean, definitely, there's that, oh, I mean, it's a surprise, isn't it? Where you've had this wonderful chemistry that's sort of percolating all the way through, and they're sexting, and then they occasionally get together, and then you just go, oh my God, that's not.
Well, normally you would see the other way around, right? Like, it would be a man who would be sort of cheating. That's what we have seen sort of growing up in movies and reading in books. And I think the way it was reversed, it was such a shocker, because you wouldn't imagine that coming at all.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah.
One thing that I don't know if at the time when you were working on the film, this is just something that I noticed for myself. When I watched it way back, life was obviously very different in a lot of ways. And just leading up to COVID, but even after COVID, the last 4 or 5 years, I have traveled a ridiculous amount for, some of the films that I've been working on, and just going through the airport to airport to airport. And that resonated a lot more with me, just even recognizing some of the airport spots. Is that something that your life sometimes ends up becoming because of work, and you try to balance it in some way?
No, I don't find myself. No, that's not really my life. I do go backwards and forwards between London and LA a fair bit, but that has become so routine that I don't really think about it in any great detail. I do, flying during lockdown. It was amazing, because the international terminal was deserted apart from us, and that was both spooky, but I also kind of miss it, because there's something fantastic about being the only passenger in an airport. But it is was disturbing. I mean, at the time, you're just going,
Yeah.
everybody. But no, that's not. Yeah, but I go. I think when you do a journey, I have a routine journey. I sometimes record out of town, but the routine of going backwards and forwards to London is one that's too familiar to really watch anymore.
It's funny you mentioned about deserted airport. I think after 5 or 6 months of COVID, I started traveling a lot to Europe, to States, and then when things started becoming normal, half the planes used to be empty, so you would have the seat next to you all around empty, and you would just lie down. And it got so spoiling because when everything became normal, I'm like, why are people sitting next to me? Shouldn't they be on the plane? Like, you just become so accustomed to it, but then you get eventually used to it too.
I was on a plane, and there's only, all 37 passengers are on board. Welcome to your private jet. And as you say, the next time that you're at a place and you just go, the entire cabin is full. Is this safe?
Yeah, for sure. Aside from composing music for film, do you do any other music work that you have done or you're doing at the moment?
Yes, so I do quite a lot of theatre, and then there's another project which a friend of mine has come up with right now at the Shed in Manhattan. There is the Sonic Sphere, which is a multi-channel system that surrounds you. And I've written some music, and I continue to write music for the Sonic Sphere, which is an incredible space. It gives you the goose pimples of live performance, even when it's not a live performance, because you are integrating the sound yourself. The sound is coming from 100 different speakers instead of from stereo, and so instead of being presented to you, you're actually experiencing it, and to some degree, you're doing your own mix by where you are in the space. So that's an incredible thing, the Sonic Sphere. But in theatre, right now I have a show called The Many Deaths of Michael Malloy, which is running in Plymouth in England, and hopefully we'll bring it to Brooklyn at some point, because it's set in Brooklyn. It's all about a character who it's all about a sort of conspiracy in a speakeasy that genuinely happened in Prohibition, Brooklyn. And also developing another show with various people. These are musicals. So Many Deaths is a musical. And I also have a little theatre entity in Los Angeles, and which was really initially to do immersive theatre, but it ended up always doing musical immersive theatre. And we had a show just before COVID called Crimson Cabaret, which was a set in a Berlin nightclub in 1963 that was full of spies. And the cabaret, all the music for the cabaret, we had a performance that was going on the entire time, and that was all scored by me, with one other track by my very good friend Savannah Wheeler. But but that's what I've that seems to take up at least half my time these days, is working on musicals for theatre.
And what's the timeline like for you to work on theatre, from prepping to the actual show itself? However, number of weeks.
For the show to get onto Broadway or the West End, it's somewhere like 6 to 7 years.
Wow.
It's a long time. That's why I say I'm working on, it's going to be a while.
But you're still doing films at the same time, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I think one of the reasons theatre takes so long is because it doesn't pay while you're doing, until it arrives. So everyone's always doing something else.
Yeah.
So you're always, yeah. So I've got, I've got films and things to do at the same time.
Which is good. I mean, you gotta have work, and which not that I'm trying to compare any of the two, but if there was something that you enjoyed more, and I'm pretty sure it probably varies on day to day, or if not week to week basis, do you prefer theater or film, um, in at any given day?
Someone once asked, what kind of film do you want to score next? And I said, something different to the last one. And
Yeah.
it's not a comment on the last one. It's just, I like variety. And so, I get bored of being alone in a room writing music. Which is what film is.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, I just get, can I get out of this room? Can I collaborate? And then you do theatre, and it's all collaboration, and there's all that wonderful, crazy energy. And then when I have a film to do after that, I just go, oh, thank goodness. I'm so relieved to be out of all that craziness and alone in a room to write music on my own. Yeah. So the contrast is really, really helpful to me. I haven't lost patience with either of them. I love them both, but they going from one to the other is really nice. I think sometimes film is like Sideways. I think you mentioned you might want to talk about Sideways, and Sideways was a very collaborative score. So that was a very big difference to an orchestral score. So and I think as long as there's that opportunity for new voices to interact with, that's one of the great things about jazz, and it's a great thing about working in theatre, and sometimes in film, that you get those interactions and surprises. Things turn up that you weren't expecting. Whereas being writing just your own orchestral score, you kind of know where you're going and what you're going to end up with, and which is very satisfying, but it's not as exciting.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, how you miss doing film school when you're doing theater and vice versa, and I think with creative people, that's what it is. Like, we love collaboration, but at the same time, we want to be in solitude in doing something that kind of just comes from our own. And then you want to go that. And I think that's very healthy, because doing too much of one thing can just, put you in that pigeonhole and sort of typecasting type of the work that you do. And I'm glad that you're very particular about what you pick, because if you're doing the same thing over and over again, you're not satisfying yourself. Yeah, you might be getting a paycheck, which is great, but at the end of the day, it's also about, what makes you happy.
Yeah, no, that's that classic. It's so difficult to make a film, and it's so unpredictable what's going to happen. With your cast, with all the elements. And of course, but you want to, as a producer, you want to make it as controllable as possible. You want to use the person who's done that before. But as the person who's done that before, you don't want to do it again, because it's old. So it's that, there's always that sort of rub.
Yeah. What's one genre that you haven't done that you would love to do? Or more than one?
I don't think there's any, in terms of film, I don't know. I don't think there's any one genre that that I would love to do that I haven't done. I'm trying to think. Is there anything? One of the nicest things is when someone gives you limitations. So and sometimes you come up with them on your own. But like if someone said, this has to feel like a Steve Reich percussion score, you're not allowed to use anything other than hand percussion and marimbas. I would love that. I would love that discipline of just getting, this is all I'm going to use. Because because the character would be so predefined. I mean, I've done that to myself a few times. I think the first time I can think of was a film called Mexico City, where I just used Spanish guitar and nothing else. But I allowed myself to morph it through all sorts of different devices. But the only source for anything I wrote was going to be the Spanish guitar. And that was very interesting. I think actually the director might have suggested that. That was Richard Shepard. But sometimes I do it to myself, of, deliberately limiting the things that I'm using. I think on was it Freaky Friday, I decided to just use strings and percussion. I was going to just use percussion, and then I decided I needed strings. But and just see if you can, get rid of no woodwind, no brass, nothing else. Just make these sound a leaner sound, so that it would, because there was that lovely score to Hero, and also to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, done just using Japanese drums and string orchestra. And it's such a clean arrangement, and so, with really unexpected approaches to various themes. And I sort of have envy of that idea of using a very limited palette, because then it produces a very specific, it's like one's blue period. If you're going to be Picasso, you're just going to go, lots of blue. And then it becomes a statement of its own. I think that's amazing.
But does that, how should I put this? As confined as you are to, or limited as you are to be able to do something that you have been instructed to do so, sometimes has there ever been a time where you're like, I wish I had the freedom to add something into it, whether it's an instrument or a different type of, anything of that nature ever occurred?
Well, yes, I mean, you get that sort of tension to, but that's kind of where the fun is, to work with that tension, and instead of compromising, figure out a way of doing what you want to do with the tool that you have. I mean, just recently, a couple of days ago, I had this song workshop that called the Notorious and Despicable Song Shop that I hold every so often. And I set an assignment, and this assignment was the verse could only use one chord. And the result was that sometimes people would have a melody which would seem to require a second chord, but they wouldn't use it because you weren't allowed another chord. And
I see what you're saying.
The result was actually nice. You just go, you can actually sing that note over this chord, and it now feels unexpected rather than completely normal and supporting. So sometimes the tension, that produces is where the interest lies.
Yep, makes perfect sense. Do you follow any kind of international music or get any kind of ideas from that? If so, which particular?
No, I'm completely random in my listening.
Okay. So you don't per se listen to a specific folk music or culture, or you try to do some research on your own, even if you're not working on a project?
No, not really. I just listen to whatever I listen to.
Who do you listen to?
Well, it's worse. I don't listen to a lot. But sometimes it's just radio. I just I'll listen to BBC Radio 3, which is their classical station. There's that amazing podcast radio that Stuart Copeland once mentioned. I forget where he mentioned it, but it's a very, I wish I could remember the name of it. It's a very eclectic sort of 2-hour episode every time, which just has all sorts of music from around the world crashing into itself. and quite an inspiring bunch of stuff. But actually, I mean, I listen to spoken word a lot because I think, dealing with music so much of the time, it's nice to let the synapses relax and refresh. So I do a lot of audiobooks.
Got it. Anything in the pipeline that you're working on, even if you are not allowed to talk about it in terms of film?
And let's see what's coming up. Well, there's the next show that I'm developing, but that's maybe a few years off. I'm about to do Everything Is Going to Be Great, which is a film directed by John Baird, who directed Stan and Ollie. That was when we first worked together, and Stonehouse, which was for television, which was our second outing together. So we're about to do this one. I'm very excited. John Baird is the most enthusiastic director. He's a dream to work for because you want to work for someone who absolutely loves what they do. And John Baird is a man who loves what he does and is really good at it. And we have a great rapport. So I'm about to get stuck into that and really looking forward to it.
And is there an official premise out for that film?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Then I won't ask. That's why I asked you official, because I don't know if it's been out yet or not, but that's fine. But I'm imagining that's probably going to come out sometime late this year, if not early next year, if you haven't started on it yet.
Yeah, I don't know the scheduling on it.
Yeah. Cool. Sounds good. Any movies you're looking forward to this year?
I don't know what's coming, so I don't know. I mean, I love films, so but right now I'm trying to be on a diet of non-magical, non-science fiction, non-science fantasy, because there's so much of that, and you go, there are so many, because the only reason any story works is because it resonates with people, analog humanity, which means that all those story types could be told without special powers and science fantasy, and so I'm kind of, as I say, I'm trying to just focus on things which happen in a version of the real world, and because there's so much charm and so much excitement and so much energy in the real world, and I think it's time we spent more time on those kind of things that we can genuinely relate to. We're in an era where people are so confused because superpowers are sort of touted all the time, and you go, they don't actually exist. We are who we are. There are no magic remedies. It's the question of putting one foot in front of the next. So I think it's I loved Ted Lasso, for example. Ted Lasso, there's nothing magical going on there. It's just a fantastic energy and humor and charm. What a gorgeous show that was.
You should watch on Apple TV Plus, unless you already have Silo.
Oh, I've been watching Silo.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a bit science fiction.
Well, I haven't seen the last episode, but I mean, it was kind of resonating with a lot of things. It's like pretty much the debate that happened during COVID. Should we be allowed to or should we not to? But I get your point, because one thing that I can't, and then maybe that might change. I keep saying this. I've been saying this for about 10 years now. I don't watch superhero movies. Like, I just can't get into this whole massive special effects, superpowers and stuff. I'll watch Mission Impossible. I'll watch Indiana Jones. I'll watch Christopher Nolan stuff and everything. But one thing that I like to make are the real stories, because the real superheroes are ordinary people living their lives in the most difficult manner, whatever that may be. And up in the is something that was just so simple, right? I mean, a guy who fires people and who travels around and who doesn't have a life and tries to ends up meeting this person and then everything backfires. And those films were at the peak in the 90s and maybe early 2000s. And those films, I don't know if they're still there. We don't hear about them. And I hope that they come back, because that's what I enjoyed growing up, especially the 90s cinema, the independent cinema, the rise of that.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think in some countries there probably still plenty of that being made. And,
I'm sure there are.
I think a lot of it is cultural. I mean, it's interesting. Silo. It occurs to me that in some parts of the world, this idea of only having what you can repair is normal life. It's not.
Yeah.
It is a very well made and very well cast show. We haven't. I didn't realize there were still more episodes coming. I thought this is going to be the last episode, and it wasn't. And I go, no!
Which episode are you on?
Was it on 9? Did we just see 9?
Yeah, the 9th came out today, which I haven't seen, but I know.
I've seen 8. I've seen, and I thought 8 was the last one, and we go, no, it's still going.
Well, they're already filming season 2.
Oh Lord!
So that's where I love miniseries. I'm not too crazy about long seasons, because after a certain point, with the exception of shows like, in my opinion, Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, things get repetitive. But one miniseries that I would suggest you to watch, it's called 000. It's 8-part, and I think it's on Amazon Prime. And then there's the other one. Oh, for God's sake, what was the name of it? I forget. But anyway, 000 is basically, it deals with Italian mafia, it deals with cartels, and it's really, really well done. It's a human story. And what's that surveillance one on BBC? They just came out with a season 2. Oh God, Capture. That's a good one. I don't know about season 2, but season 1 is.
Oh yeah, I saw Capture.
Yeah.
That was. Yeah, I'm with you. If they're going to finish the story, I want the story to finish. Now, if it's a second season and it's a new story or a new finish, fine. But if it's just you thought it was going to finish, you go, oh no, we're just going to spin this on for another 3 seasons or something. I lose my mind, and I give up. I want to know that we're getting to the end. And then, because with Silo, I'm worried now, because if there's a season 2, because it seems to me that something, we should know what's. Anyway.
Well, I know, I get it, but I think at the end of the day, it's whether we like it or not, it's about, if you don't make them, then you don't, make profit, and if you don't make profit, then you can't make more stuff, and so on and so forth. I'm not trying to present an excuse, but that's just unfortunately the nature of business. But a story gets lost, and I genuinely hope that the only movies that we hear about, at least I hear about, are the big ones. Like, I don't hear about small films anymore, whether they're being made or not. The films that I make, they're about, human rights violations, and with protagonists, real narrative documentaries, and the audience for that is much smaller compared to an audience for, let's say, a film like, Iron Man, for example. Because people like to escape. But this is our world. We need to understand our world first more. A lot of people don't know about so many things. Even you and I have no clue what's going on in another part of the world, because everything in the news is, in terms of film, is about the mainstream films.
Yeah, it's true, and there's lots of room for it. I think there's. To a degree, I think it's the machinery of the distribution. The distribution machinery that's got used to this idea that you spend $200 million film or $1 million on a film and you'll make so much profit. But I love the idea that instead, let's make 20 films of $10 million and publicize them, put them out properly, and make them. But it's we'll see.
It's becoming a little frustrating now. I mean, I watch now cinema from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s. I might go see. I will go see. I shouldn't say I might. I will go see Mission Impossible. I'll go see Indiana Jones. But other than that, I mean, because there's something that we kind of grew up with. But other than that, there's nothing for me to watch. I'll just revisit old cinema and watch it with my kids and stuff.
One of the things when we were talking about Silo, it reminded me that I had this idea that James Bond films should only be set in the 60s. And whenever they present new technology, it should be laughably, wind-up clockwork to us. And it would have this inherent humor. Firstly, most of the reasons it should be in the 60s. I mean, it's partly why Indiana Jones initially worked so well.
Yeah.
It was set in a period where everything's advanced so much, but we can look back, and the nature of storytelling is not compromised by cell phones and technology. It's whips and guns and biplanes. And Bond films were, Bond was originally in the 60s and or 50s and 60s, and the idea that that's where you just keep him in that era. The Cold War is very straightforward. It's we've got the Soviet Union versus the West, and so the balance of powers is very easy to understand, and you've got all this ridiculous potential for clockwork devices and thinking they are fancy new technology. When you look at Goldfinger and they've got a tiny little pager that he's got it hidden in his heel, and I know at the time everyone was going, "Woo, that's so incredible! It sounds fictiony." Now it's so absurd, but I think there's more fun in that than there is in constantly being cutting edge and science fictiony and I mean, one of the tropes in films now is that you hear that the villain's got a lair in Cuba, and you go, suddenly all our heroes are in Cuba. Didn't it take them a day and a half to sort of pack their bags, get themselves over there, and then we go, no, we need to be in Taiwan. Boom! Now they're in Taiwan. No attention. No, I get it. Back. It's going to take you 24 hours to get there, and or Wakanda. That's a long way away.
Yeah, no, I especially I haven't seen all of them. I've seen maybe a couple of the Fast and Furious films, and I think that I can tell watching in the trailer, like them now, it's like every film, and Mission Impossible included, everything is about international locations, right? And if you have those, it's eye-popping and it's like a touristy thing, and people want to go to these places on top of the action, and you miss that element of story. Again, everything boils down to story. If the story is dictating you to go to different locations, sure. But if you're just taking the story to different locations because for the hell of it, then you're screwed.
Yeah. Great.
Well, let's see what cinema holds for us in future. My prediction is that now I think people are getting tired and fatigued with all the movies and with the algorithm, and hopefully that would revive something in the next 5 to 10 years. But hey, I'm not an expert. I'm just guessing.
I love it when a film defies expectations, and you're just going, oh, and now he's going to die, and then he doesn't die, and you go, wait, what? That was this is now I'm excited because that was the obvious thing to happen next, and so yeah, I like it. As you say, when the algorithm breaks, then we have interesting storytelling has a potential.
For sure. Great. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate your time. I know we didn't get to chat about Sideways, but would love to do it again if you have time in future. And maybe we can chat about Sideways or something else that you like to chat about.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a great day.
You too.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment. And do come back for another episode. Until then, have a great day.